vibrate with our sound system. Do we have any amendments to tonight's agenda?
I'd like to pull item number 2, EDC 2012-08 for discussion.
Okay. Any other amendments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we do not have any presentations. We do have 2 public hearings. The first public hearing is redistricting ward maps, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for that, for the ward maps. Do we have anyone from the audience who would like to comment on the redistricting ward maps? Not hearing any, I will close the public hearing on that. Now, part is going to come back by City Council to discuss.
And in order to be properly adopted, it must be.
Okay, so in 2 weeks we'll see it again, or that's when we'll have a chance to discuss it. All right, next I will open the public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2012-2013 budget. Anyone here want to comment on the public hearing on the 2012-2013 budget? Please sign in and state your name for the record, please.
Lisa Peterson, resident of Yorkville. Lisa Peterson, resident of Yorkville. I had sent a letter to all the city council members and the mayor, and I have the letter here. And I'd like to submit it to the stenographer so that it can become part of the minutes of the city council meeting. And I'm not going to go through and read the whole letter again, but there is one part that I would like to read. And that is regarding the city budget and the spending. And part of my letter stated, I am just not sure when the city council will ever pay attention to the lessons from past history regarding the spending of taxpayers' money before you get it. And I'm just wondering how far into debt will we get us. We have issues with the Rob Roy Sewer Fund that we're now paying for, the countryside tip that's looming, it's $1.8 million. We don't get that area developed before, I think it's like 2018. You voted to raise our tax levies for the last 2 years. You approved $42,000 for the bike trails over by Raintree Village. I'm not sure why on that. You had a resident get up and complain that she wasn't connected to anything because she lived in Raintree Village, so you all voted to approve $42,000 to put in a bike trail there, even after the residents voted no twice and told you that we don't want our tax dollars going towards the bike trails. You did the build rebate program, and I may be wrong on this, but my understanding of it was a $5,000 reduction from the city for 50 homes. So that'd be $250,000. $100,000 for a road study project. And the most recent vote, $357,320 that the city council accepted as unguaranteed or unsecured funds for the Kennedy Trail. And just adding all that up, that's $749,000. So in less than a year, with the new city council, you've taken on $749,000 worth of debt. And the thing of it is that the kicker of it is that none of the debt is necessary to the running of our city. And it's just, you've got to stop the spending. Please, I'm begging you. I'm absolutely begging you. I don't know where you guys are going to be in the year 2015, 2016, 2017. You know, it's great to want Newman to add all these wonderful amenities to the city, but at some point, somebody's going to have to pay for it. You know, I mean, the Kennedy thing, the $357, maybe we'll get that money back, maybe we won't, but it's not a guaranteed debt. It's not a secured debt, so we don't know if we're going to get all of that back or not yet. And it's just, you know, I know you're in the budget talks for this year, but there's just got to be some accountability to the taxpayers of this town for the spending of our tax dollars. There just has to be. There's been discussions on other issues as well. I know the health insurance is one that keeps popping up. There's some citizens that are very angry about it. You know, it's like $153,000. On a personal level, I will say this. No one should be without health insurance, and no one should be denied the right to have health insurance. Unfortunately, it's a necessary evil that our family learned from first-hand experience 2 years ago when all of a sudden life was grand, and a day later we're in the doctor's office and find out our son has to have over a $500,000 spinal fusion surgery. I don't know what our family would have done without health care insurance. We currently pay $640 every month out of our own pocket for our health care insurance. Me personally, I don't want to see the health care benefits taken away from the city council members. I did state back in December of 2010, I believe it was, at a city council meeting though, I think the contributions need to be more. Right now, I think they're only at around 15%. And I think that needs to be bumped up a little bit. But it's just, I mean, that's just something I just, you know, and at this point, the $153,000 or whatever the health care is, to me, that's a mute point. You've got $153,000 or $749,000. I mean, you know, all of you, past, present, future, you all spend a lot of time attending meetings. I opened up the city packet meeting for tonight. I believe it was 353 pages. And so in order for you all to sit here and understand the process and make educated votes, you have to read through that. You all dedicate a lot of your time for the good of the community, and I appreciate that. But I mean, I sound like a broken record. I know I do. But it's just, I'm here. I can't afford to sell my house. I can't afford to move. Depending on what the city council does over the next couple of years, I may not be able to keep my house either, because I may not be able to afford my property taxes anymore to live here, along with a lot of other homeowners that live in this town that are on fixed incomes. I'm just begging you to stop the spending. I would have liked to have seen this letter go public, but hopefully people that are listening or want to see it can go on the city website and read it firsthand. It's too long for anyone to want to publish in their paper, but I'm going to turn it in now. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience want to comment on the 2013 budget? Please state your name, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'll say it twice. Mark A. Johnson. Mark A. Johnson. Last time I was here, I forgot to say it. I saw it on the video. I forgot to state my name. So, catching up for it. What I'd like to do first is hand out something to all of them. Good. Basically, it's what I'm going to be talking about. I wasn't sure when to bring this up for this comments or public hearing, so I'm kind of asking for your indulgence. But I may have a few comments on here that really fit under the comment section, but if you can let me do it, then I'll get it all done at once. I won't go through detail by detail in detail because I think you're going to be discussing it later and maybe you'll have some of the answers. And I don't expect you to give me an answer immediately right now, but I'm interested in finding out what you think. Trying to understand the complete budget for a normal citizen is a daunting task to say the least. I have many questions, but here are a few that seem to rattle my cage more than others. I'm giving you paper copies so you can follow along. Some of my comments are complaints, some are suggestions for improvements, and some are what I perceived as errors or omissions. I'm not asking for answers, but for you all to take a look at these or take them under advisement and adjust as appropriate. I did try to copy and paste things out of the online paperwork that you guys got with some numbers that so it'll kind of relate to what you have in the online. Beecher Center Park. This one kind of upset me. This again is there's some other reasons for it, but it says the playground equipment at Beecher Center is closely approaching the end of its useful lifespan. And they're saying that they're going to take it out in 13 or 14 with no replacement. Number one, it's all steel. So, my grandkids play there all the time. I butt up against the property, so we're down there a lot. I don't see that being a major problem, and I know it's down the road, but whoever makes these decisions, they need to make it more transparent. The Riverfront Park was a personal favorite. The mayor, the ex-mayor, decided she wanted the concert pavilion rather than the park. They brought in the big chunks of wood in here and said, you know, it's rotting, it's falling apart. Little did you know that the fence was chain link metal. The swings were metal. The monkey bars were metal. The digging tool, the excavator tool, was metal. All that was bad that I saw was the slide, but they took the whole thing out, and now, as I see in the budget, they're saying they may not ever get to replace that. And they could have taken the slide out and left the rest of it. So, I was on the original park board in the city. I was on it for about 10 years. And it was a lot smaller, a lot less than what it is now. But somebody needs to be accountable to maybe make you guys aware of this stuff ahead of time. And I praise you for getting this 5-year budget or trying to look out 5 years. That's something that needs to be done. And I know that I'm also on that board of cut spending. And I understand there's some spending you can cut and other spending you can't. But looking down the road, unless something changes pretty quick, we're in big trouble. And I think you guys are starting to see that, and that's a big change from the previous administration, and I do thank you for that. And again, I'm not going to get into the little detail. I was going to make a comment. You can read it for yourself. One of the budget items was the pari-mutuel tax. Now, again, I'm not the guy that's an expert in budgets. I did a lot of them in my previous job, but nothing quite to the extent you guys do. And just having a few days to look at it hasn't made it too easy. But they made a comment in there about the off-track betting parlor closing effective January, I believe. But I saw in the budget that they've got $15,000 budgeted as revenue, $20,000 for the year 2012. And I think last year you only brought in $5,131. If it's closed 2 months ago, I guess I'm curious why you have that revenue in there. Hanging baskets. Glad that the program was a beautiful thing for the city, but I'm glad it's over, and I hope that you guys, you're saying it's a 2-year hiatus. I'd like to see that be pushed more back onto the business owners. They've got as much to do as the city in wanting to get people into their place, and they should be held more responsible for that kind of thing. So you've got 2 years to convince them. Hotel tax rebate. Question I have there, it says the line item represents 90% of all hotel motel taxes generated in the city being forwarded to the Aurora Area Convention and Visitors Bureau per our intergovernmental agreement. So you got a contract. But 90%? And I guess I asked, what can we actually see of value in that? Has anybody done the accountability to see some of the magazines, and they're nice looking magazines. But are we getting bang for the buck? I don't even know what 90% of the motel tax is, dollar-wise. There's probably a line item in there, but I can't see it, or at least I couldn't find it. The reimbursement, the old jail downtown, another one of my things that I really didn't care for, but the project's on hold. And it says a new parking lot site will return to the original. I guess I'd like to know, I know that we're getting money from the state for giving up parking. Is there anything available that the city can publish to tell us what their thoughts are? Or if it's something in negotiations, I understand you can't, but I'd like to keep my eye on that, to know more about it. Be more transparent. Grand Reserve Court order. Again, I've been to a lot of meetings, I've been to a lot of things. I guess I missed this one. But it's saying the final payment to the successor developer will be made around December 2012. If somebody can offline even tell me what that is, I'd like to know more about it. Sewer infrastructure fees. The final Rob Roy sewer payments will be made, and it sounds like we're going to go in the hole big time after that. And I guess it says unless Westbury Village or Caledonia were to adhere. Well, you know, I have a feeling you guys know what's going to happen there. So I hope that nobody's holding their breath on that one. And I guess the sewer and water people will be getting that increase. And it looks like you guys have it set up to remove it after that's paid off or after it comes out. But I just, maybe I misread that. That's the way I read it. That you were just putting it in and then there's out after that's paid. And I guess I'd say good and make sure you live up to that. Hometown days. This is another, I'm going to get onto this one a little bit because it's a comment area. But I live and I border the city here. I'm county, but I border the city. And they're doing the hometown days here. They moved it out to Beecher years ago when they were tearing up the streets down in Hydraulic and putting in newer water, sewer, whatever. Are they planning on ever going back down? I mean, they're wanting to revitalize the downtown. Maybe that's where that belongs again. And part of that is, it never bothers us too much. I mean, there's noise and there's a lot of debris and garbage, and that's what I'll maybe talk about a little bit. But it's an inconvenience to us, and then we have to get told that we can't come through the back fence, or we got to walk around, we got to do a lot of things. And actually, we end up having to drive and park over here where we can just walk through the back. They don't allow it. But the big thing is, and the city does a pretty good job of cleaning up, but it's pretty much a mess back there, especially after the last couple of windstorms. But I got word from a neighbor that the city stuck a letter in between their doors saying that they were going to tear out the fence and they were not going to replace it. And I told the neighbor that I think the city has a right. From looking at my survey, the fence was on the city's property. It was probably about 18 inches onto the property. So I suppose they have all the right in the world. I don't think it's as bad as maybe someone's making it out to be. I just don't know what they're after there. But we give an awful lot. And, you know, I'd like to see it handled a little bit different. Kids are, if you walk it, you'll see the kids are busting through the fence. We're always repairing. I've got a picket fence, plastic, but I've had the kids jumping, going through the yard, taking a shortcut, and they broke slats out. I've had to replace them. Never really came to the city and complained. pretty much the neighbors all. But, be aware that we put up with an awful lot because of the ball games and whatever. A lot of debris. I actually took a picture of the far corner down here, which my wife and I clean out all the time. And, the city, I can call the city and say, hey, you need to clean it up. It's a fire hazard. But we try to do it when it's, in between rainstorms. But I guess I'm going to say, I didn't get a letter, so I guess they're not upset with my fence. But cut my neighbors some slack, because I think they really put up with an awful lot there, and they're trying. I know it's not like they're letting it go to heck. They do take pride in their properties. Just give them a little bit of time this spring to fix it. TIF fund questions. I always seem to keep coming back to countryside TIF, and I know I've been beat up over it. TIFs don't cost the city any money, and TIFs are wonderful, and I don't believe that, I'm sorry. But I know that the one south of town evidently was a moneymaker, hooray. But what I'm seeing in your 5-year plan, it's going to eat up $1 million+ before it finally gets paid off. And I don't know where you guys are going to get the money. And I don't know how you're going to get out of it. But I guess my comment to you is, try and look at these developers with critical eyes. I'm a businessman, I understand what they're doing, but you keep giving and giving, and as we found out at Grand Reserve and at Windette Ridge and a lot of others, when things go bad, they forget who their friends are in the city council. So try and keep that in mind, that these developers that are coming in promising the world, make sure it's in some kind of legalese that we can nail them and get the money up front, something. There was one thing in there about $150,000 for Windette Ridge. It looks like it's payable in, oh boy, my years kind of printed off. I think it was 2017 or 2016. I'm not sure which. You're going to have to pay $150,000 in 1 year to the developer or to somebody that owns it. I guess I'm not sure what that is. I'd like to know a little bit more. Maybe George or Carl or somebody can give me that. And now for a couple of things I'd like to see. Rec Center. I don't know what's going to happen there. It's going to be voted on, but I see that they have a tentative agreement on a possible contract. But would it be possible to have real estate taxes for the rec center taken out and put in a separate line item? The reason I say that is it's actually a double loser. Because if it was a private enterprise, we'd be getting that 40-some thousand income. Well, you'd be getting a portion of that 40,000 income, and the county and whatever get the rest. But now you're paying it. So it's, I only see it deducted once, and I'm almost of the opinion that it ought to be deducted twice, because you're not getting it from a private industry, if you choose to go along with it. And calling it out separate and not hiding it, and not, I shouldn't say hiding it, but having it disguised inside the budget, I'd like to see that called out separate. Bonds. You guys got a bunch of bonds out there, and they're due at different times. You're refinancing, and you're doing everything you can. I understand that, and I guess I've got to agree, because it's money that we promised to pay, and I pay my bills, and I'm glad you guys are trying to do that. And maybe you've got it, but I'd like to see the bonds become more transparent and somehow have a section of the budget that says bonds, and it just shows how much you're paying yearly and when they're paid up, or when the big balloon comes in, or whatever. So you've got a visualization out in the future I don't know, 10 years, whatever, and show it. And again, maybe it's out there, but I didn't see it. And then the last thing, I guess, kind of goes in with the budget, and I don't know how you figured in there, maybe you got it, I didn't see it. Is there any kind of a calculation done on gasoline tax? Now, gasoline has been going up dramatically, and I don't think it's going to go back down. Increased price means increased taxes. Increased taxes ought to be reflected someplace. Now, I know you can't always say, well, what if it goes down? Then we'd be projecting money out there. But maybe there's something you can say, the potential is there for the price of gas going up, that we're going to pick up another 100,000 or 50,000, whatever it is. Maybe it's 5,000. I can't imagine. But my wife says, people are going to drive less. I said, yeah, but most people here are working. Most people have to drive, and they're not going to drive much less. They may not go on a vacation or something, but they're going to be driving to work. They're going to be using that gas, and they're not going to find it any cheaper in Oswego or anyplace else. So maybe have something in the budget where you could allocate some money for increased taxes from gas residents. Because I think that goes into the motor fuel, which goes into roads, which is another area we need. And the last comment I think I made in here, I saw that we're looking at infrastructure, water, sewer, 100 kilometer lines over in the south side of town. I'm glad you're putting that out there. And the only thing I guess I'd like to see is maybe have somebody throw some estimated costs on it so we can kind of look and say, you know what, that's another $2 million or that's another $5 million or whatever that's going to come out of the citizens' pockets down the road. And maybe the transparency will help. So that's all I got. Thanks. And I'll stick around in case you answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I don't know how deep we're going to go into budget discussions tonight. What I'll do, with your permission, is get down with staff and do a memo to aldermen for the next meeting, answering all these questions. Okay? Do we have any other citizen comments on the budget?
There was another point that I didn't want to bring up when I spoke earlier. It's still Lisa Peterson, resident in Yorkville, by the way. But that's the rec center. It may have seemed like a good idea at the time when the leases were signed. Obviously, it's kind of proven that it's going to have a stinker. It's cost the city a lot of money. Now we're negotiating purchasing the building, which I'm guessing there's some air conditioning units and everything. And I guess I have a question and a comment. If this rec center, when it was Club 47, was such a moneymaker deal, I don't understand why the Walker family didn't keep it as a private industry to begin with, and why they were so quick to pawn it off to the city. And I went to the Sports Authority. I bought an exercise bike for $110. It's been the best doggone thing. I used it religiously for years. Now the only exercise it provides for me is when I dust it off every week. I need to get back into that cycle again. It's hard to do. But exercise equipment is pretty cheap. I mean, there's a lot of decent things you can get out there, either through a sports store, a garage sale, online. Just as a taxpayer, it's just my personal thing. I don't feel that it's my responsibility to pay if somebody wants to go and bust their chops on a treadmill or an exercise bike. It's not my job as a taxpayer to have my tax dollars going to anybody to have a workout facility. There's private things around here. Most of the people that live in Yorkville don't work in Yorkville. There's a big LA Fitness thing out in Oswego. There's Hawaii in Plano. There's Anytime Fitness. There's a few others, I'm sure. But I just really, this is coming up in the next couple of months, and I just really urge the city council to discuss this hard and heavy. My personal viewpoint is the 2,000 members or the 3,000 or 4,000 or however many members the rec center has. If they want that facility, then the cost of purchasing that facility is in their membership dues, not on the taxpayers. There's been so many people that have whined and complained that they want the rec center, and I've heard people say, oh, the majority of the people want it. No, the majority don't. Because if the majority of the people wanted the rec center, then their membership would be up to around, what, 7, 8, 9, 10,000? It'd be over half the city going to it. And over half the city does not utilize that facility. So I really urge you in the next couple of months to think long and hard and heavy about taking on an additional $2.5 million debt that the majority of the residents aren't interested in having. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the proposed budget? Hearing none, I'll close public hearing on the budget and move on to citizen comments. Larry, please state your name.
You just pulled that twice. I can't write it. My name's Larry DeBoard. I'm a citizen of Yorkville. And I wanted to talk to two things. I just had some interesting comments on the budget. I'm going to get into the rec center and help you with that in a little bit. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the city council meeting I was at 2 weeks ago tonight. I mean, that thing was remarkable. I have not quite seen a situation like that go down. It was just amazing to me. And I wanted to kind of take a look at some of the lowlights of that thing. Well, excuse me, the highlights of that thing. But before I do that, I wanted to commend a few people on the council. I wanted to commend Carlo and Rose, and George Gilson. You guys have been consistent all the way through on this bike path thing. You've been unwavering. You knew what you were looking at, and again, your consistency and your passion was just outstanding. And I'm even going to comment on Diane Teeling and commend her. There's very few things that Diane comes up with that I agree with. But she's got passion and she's got conviction, and for that she should be admired whether we agree with it or not. So I commend her on that. But as I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about the lowlights. One of the things that just flabbergasted me was that somebody in the crowd could talk about, give us a chance to raise this money to get this state grant, and no taxpayer money is involved. Nobody on this council opened their mouth and said, where do you think the state gets their money from? The taxpayers. Somebody get up and say that. This whole thing is about taxpayer money. The whole thing was. It's how do we get out of the least amount of our taxpayer money. That's what the whole thing is about. And nobody on this council could open their mouth or think fast enough to say, and their thoughts on it, that, yeah, let's just blow the money. Then, there's another comment that was brought up. Someone in the crowd said, and I understand the logic behind this, there was a little bit of leverage being used in there, that we have the paperwork ready for a 501c3, and if you can get this vote tonight, we'll have it open tomorrow. Well, first of all, if you're going to raise money, and that's the business I'm in, you don't need a 501c3. You should open up a bank, number one. And number two, unless you know that individual person's tax situation, you've got no right to get tax place. You don't know what they got on their tax return. You can't tell them what's deductible and what isn't unless you're a CPA and you have knowledge of that individual's tax situation. So that, and that actually to some extent can get you into a liability problem down the road. And I'm surprised that nobody on this council would say, hey, open a bank account. And then, the one that really flipped me out is one of the aldermen was talking about raising the $350,000, and then we get $1.6 million approximately from the state, and that's a whale of a return on investment. That's scary thinking. That's very scary thinking. First of all, when you invest $350,000, you get a return on it. How are you going to get a return on this one? How are you going to get a return on it? What are you gonna charge them $10 to ride your bikes down the thing? How are you gonna get a return on it? Number two, how are you gonna sell it to get the $350 back or any part of it? You gonna privatize it? So, there's a lot of things that people just blew right through there. And then the last thing was, at the end, you voted to go ahead and accept the grant and trust the people to come up with the money. I think George made a comment that we trusted developers. Heck, they even had money in the bank. And bellied up on you. And now you're going to trust people that ain't got no money in the bank. And then you want us to have the confidence, the people have spoken about this, they want you to have the confidence that you're going to do the right thing with the rec center. Whew! People talking about indigestion. Man, I mean, I think it's probably possible. I'm fully prepared to wake up after you make this decision on the rec center that we own two of them. Because I can't see how that could happen. But I'll tell you what, you guys on this council, you can reach new depths. You can do it if you try. And I want to leave you with a little story that happened, and I happened to be in a situation about 20 years ago. I know you're not going to believe this, and I want you and the council to listen to this closely, real closely. I was working with a company called Northwest Airlines. Maybe some of you have heard of it. Merged not too long ago with Delta. Northwest Airlines was a publicly traded company to about 88. And the company got taken private. These guys did a leveraged buyout back in those days. Bill's the only one that's older to remember those days. And these guys borrowed a bunch of money, took the company out, stripped the assets out, so on and so forth. Well, the market, the economy got a little soft on them, and all of a sudden they got into a little bit of trouble. And they couldn't borrow any more money. And they borrowed from every big bank they could. They borrowed from every insurance company. And they couldn't borrow any more, and they needed the money for union contracts, so on and so forth. And a light bulb went on in the guy's head. And he said, well, you can't borrow from anybody else. You do the right thing. You borrow from the government. So what they did is they went out, and they got the guys in the $5,000 suits. They could talk out of both sides of their mouths. I wasn't one. They went to the state of Minnesota, and they had a presentation that would knock your socks off. And they said, we're going to build a maintenance base in Rochester, Minnesota. And they paid $1 million for an option on 142 acres of land. And they said, by God, we're going to build this maintenance base, and we're going to hire 35,000 people. And this is going to be the greatest thing since night baseball, blah, 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 blah. The city's going to look like this and look like that. What do you think the state of Minnesota did? They did it hook, line, and sinker. And they said, tell you what we'll do. We'll give you $300 million now. And a year from now, we want to see the progress on this maintenance base. And if we're satisfied with the progress, we'll give you the other $300 million. Oh. You guys had a part in it, number one. Number two, they went about 9 months, and then finally a light bulb went on at Airlines, and they said, you know what? These guys want to come down the road. I said, uh-oh. So they went to Caterpillar, and they rented some bulldozers. And they got some guys from the UAW. And they got them out there with the bulldozers, and they had them drive around in circles for about 3 days. Dust is flying, stakes are in the ground, and they got all these politicians down there, and they said, see, we're making progress. This goes over here, this goes over there. Here's the other 300 million. 6 months later, they took the company public. The market got better. They took the company public. They raised $10 billion. They paid off every one of their debtors and gave the $600 million back to the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota said, well, where's the maintenance base? They said, we changed their mind. The reason why, the point of the story is the reason why probably the walkers came to you couldn't sell it to anybody else. They couldn't. They couldn't sell it to anybody else. And this is not here to knock around water. God love him, he's a businessman in his argument. When we have no business being involved. None. Fix the streets. Fund the police pension plan. Do a bunch of stuff. But don't try to run a business. It's not what we're here for. It was brought to my attention the other day that this thing is now in the black. Good. There should be a line of guys waiting to buy this thing. Be done with it. Go on about your business. Go on and fix streets. Do whatever it is you need to do. If somebody tells me that, well, it's the only place we got out there that we can go, heck, there's strip centers all over this town that are empty. You find one for, somebody's got to lend you one. But get out of the business. Get done with it. It's done red ink. And now if it is in the black, get out of the red ink. Give it to somebody else. Don't see if you can get shoulder deep in it. You bend knee deep in it. Let some business meet. Let somebody else do it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other citizen comments? Yes, sir.
Mark Johnson, Yorkville. Actually, a couple things. One, in reference to the rec center. And I don't think I put it in the paper, but you made me think of it. It seems to me that the city gave a special deal last year for people that were joining the rec center. They get like a year and a half for their year's dues. Is that factored in to your budget? Or you? I mean, there's going to be 6 months out there. You're not going to get any income. Yeah, I mean, if you eat it up into 12 months like you should. And they were bragging about how they increased the number of people going. Well, a year and a half for a year, maybe that had some of it. I'm not sure when that fits in, but I'd like to know if that's budgeted over 18 months or just over 12. The other thing, I really questioned whether I was going to bring this up here, because this really belongs at the county board meeting. But since next Tuesday is election, and all of the county board members are up, maybe somebody will watch us on TV, and maybe somebody will get the gist of it. Maybe somebody will talk about it around the coffee machine or the water cooler. But I was out on the Kendall County board website, and they have a thing called the Kendall County Community Economic Development Plan. And there's a lot of stuff in there, but something I wasn't aware of. And I guess maybe you are, but I'm going to make you aware. And it's not your problem, because you're just a small piece of that pie, but you're still a piece of that pie. Illinois is currently ranked 7th in the nation for highest property taxes paid, based on a 3-year average from 2007 to 2009. In fact, of the 1,823 counties in the nation, northeastern Illinois contains 5 counties listed in the top 30 in the nation. The Tax Foundation has determined that Kendall County is ranked 24th in the nation out of 1,823 counties. 24th, highest. Although this ranking seems to put Kendall County in a bad position nationally, higher property tax rates throughout northern Illinois County are not an uncommon trend. Kendall County, as well as other neighboring counties, has become a victim of the increasing property taxes seen throughout the entire state of Illinois. This essentially has put the entire state at an extreme competitive disadvantage. And a couple of comments about this. One is the U.S. median real estate taxes. Median real estate across the country. $1,838. Kendall County median, $5,067. Almost 3 times the median. So when people are crying about their real estate taxes, and I know as being a realtor, a lot of people don't even know what their real estate taxes are. They just put them in escrow and it's part of my house payment. They don't, if everybody had to take their taxes and pay them in June and August instead of putting it in escrow, I think we have a revolt throughout the state on taxes. And so when you're hearing these guys complain about taxes, you know, it's ridiculous. And I guess I'll pass on this other tidbit, and this is what kind of made me wonder what ours was. I'm fortunate enough to have a little place in Arizona that I go to in the winter for a month or two. I bought it 2 years ago, foreclosure. Taxes on it were $1,200 the first year I was there. They dropped to $720 without me asking one thing after I purchased it. The next year I got an assessment, my tax was $720. Last year they were down to $594. I just got my assessment the last week for out there. And based on what I'm seeing, the value, I'm going to probably be under $500 for a year. Now, you can talk to people that are out there. A lot of people don't know Arizona, but their roads are nicer than anything we got around here, believe me. Their schools are brand new. I'm in an area just like Yorkville, farm fields and beautiful schools, beautiful rec centers, but they're YMCA's, not they're private or non-government anyway. But I just look at that and I think, what I'm paying every month for taxes out there, my taxes are a whole year. Now I don't know, I haven't checked into it far enough to see where Arizona ranks, but I have a feeling they're going to be a lot lower than what Illinois is. And, you know, when these, I know you hear it all the time, when these guys stand up here, and the few people and complain about cutting spending, you know, we're not blowing smoke. And I know most of you guys get that. But I'm financially pretty good. And I've got kids that aren't. And I've got cousins and uncles and nephews that are living paycheck to paycheck. And I just got to say, you know, anything you guys can do, this 5-year plan going out, I think is wonderful. But if there's anything you can start cutting more, please do it. Because the people out here are, it'll turn around someday. We all know it will, but these people are hurting right now, and they can sure use some help. So even if it's $20. Thanks.
Yeah, Mark brought up something I wanted to mention. I'm not going to yell on the screen with you guys, so you're rotten and everything. On this budget, the point came up on Mark mentioned about refinancing. If you can, you refinance every piece of paper you got. And fast. So you got this guy Bernanke saying next January, that's right after, you know, what goes on in November. We're going to take a hard look at these rates. I mean, if we're not near the bottom here, we're probably close. And when it goes the other way, it will go up. It will go hard and fast. And you won't have a chance. Anything you can do on a refinancing, you do. Carte blanche, I don't care what it is. Refi that thing right down to whatever you can get out of it. And be done with it. You may be early, but it's better early be early than late. One of the other things on the budget, and I don't know where you guys, Gary and stuff, are on this, but another little problem out there is this guy in Springfield, Quinn. You know, he's got this proposal to take this school pension funding issue and put it on the local school districts. That's a problem. That's a big problem, because depending on who you got on the school board, this will be a free-for-all if this comes down. And it's a smart move by him, because it gets the whole mess off his back and throws it right on the individual, and he points a finger at them, well, they're the bad guys that did this funding. So, I mean, politically, really good for him. But this thing could get a little stinky. You could see 20% pop in your property taxes overnight. That's going to put a crimp on a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. And I would just suggest, and maybe you've already done some of this stuff, but I would just suggest I would get in Tom Cross's face on this and say, hey, you know, talk to what's going on down there. You hear this? Because I'll tell you, this thing goes through. Ooh, this thing could hurt everybody's wallets overnight. And you could take that 5-year plan and burn it and start all over again. Because that would be a tough deal. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. That's it.
My name is Don Burks. I'd like to maybe make a couple comments about the rec center and then one other issue. In regards to the rec center, I heard, like you mentioned about enrollment, and I heard something else mentioned there was in the black. In reading through the information that the city put out in regards to the rec center, just maybe 3 or 4 months ago, it was suggested that their enrollment went from 950 some odd people to 1,400 some people. But it also, interestingly, said that their cash flow only increased $6,000. So I would like the park board or whoever's putting that information together to be a little more transparent and suggest, you know, they obviously don't have 1,400 full-time members. If they are counting somebody that comes one time, is that a member? They obviously pay a small fee, but their cash flow doesn't reflect the 1,400 member thing. So also, when we talk about the taxes, when if we eliminate the taxes from that, we're also taking away from the tax that goes to the school district. So everybody else has to pick up that amount. And in relationship to what this gentleman just said in regards to pensions, if that be the case and they're going to dump the pensions back on the school districts, and that'd be a real eye-opener, because the bulk of the taxes go to the school district initially. So again, in relationship to the rec center, I know that the school district has to expand the high school because they're pretty much at capacity, and they're talking about putting on a field house. So really, I would like to see intergovernmental things, and wherever we can cut costs, I think we're going to have to. But we just have to control costs here. The other thing that I would bring up, I saw in regards to the Grand Reserve, that the company that's buying the lots out there are going to partner up with Ocean Atlantic. And I thought Ocean Atlantic was the company that stiffed the city for $500,000. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? And they're also partnering up with this company in Plainfield on another project. So I guess the main word would be where.
Thank you, Mr. Burks.
Anyone else before we move on? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Roll call, please.
Gilson?
Nay.
Vilshuski? Aye. Munns?
Aye.
Spears? Aye. Wolfstall?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Funkhauser?
Aye.
Teeling? Aye. Motion carries.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting for February 14th, 2012 as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions on minutes? George?
Just a few corrections for the meeting. Okay, on pages 7, it says Walensky stated for additional business, it should be WSBY, it's SPY.
Even like correction.
Sorry, I still remember. Under page 3, second, well, I guess the first middle paragraph, or the second down the top, says Alderman Gilson stated he can share some of the questions he asked, YBSD, he asked whatever happened to this major bid expediency, and the YBSD stated they have no idea. What should be deleted is this major bid expediency, and what should say is push to sign this agreement in order to meet the bid and project deadlines. And then that same paragraph, the next the sentence that starts with the YBSD stated they don't know and to ask the staff, that's not what they stated on that particular issue. So that should be deleted. The last, down here, it says, on the last, towards the bottom of the paragraph, it says that was their answer. They are hoping after it's done that it will kind of sit there for decades. I'm not so sure that was stated by, I think Mark said that. I don't think that was stated, Mark, did you recall? I don't think you said that they're hoping it kind of sits for decades, did you?
That sounds right. I don't know if I use those exact words, but that's the word for it.
Okay. And then Alderman Gilson stated that the way this goes is that if this river has a flood and that the bank is totally washed away and the city is on the hook to fix it, and that could be a major process. And actually what I stated was Alderman Gilson stated that the way this agreement is stated, which is the paper we were looking at, the agreement we were looking at that day. So take out goes and add agreement is stated. And that should be okay there. And then last, from the water quality perspective, certainly the upstream quality behind the dam is poorer than downstream. It should be worse than downstream.
Which paragraph are you
Oh, I'm
on?
sorry. DEI engineer, starts with DEI. It goes, the sentence that starts from the water quality perspective, certainly the upstream water behind the dam is poorer than poorer. Either you could say poorer, I guess, or worse than downstream. More poorer. That's all I have for correction. Thank you.
Alderman Olszewski.
Last page, page 7, for the staff report. Under the build program is referred to. It should be on capitalized. It's mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It's an acronym. And then the executive session is Ron not here. There, we had one for. First one's okay. The second one should be for the purchase and lease of property. The third one should be for personnel. And the fourth one was litigation. And then I get one more under the clerk's report. She made a motion. Kathy, did she entertain a motion? Did she request a motion?
Right.
On the clerk's report?
Last page.
Page 5.
From the clerk has a motion. Of course not.
She didn't say she entertained a motion, but did she did?
Entertaining. Mary requested to made the motion.
Or she requested a motion?
Page 5.
Last page.
That's city clerk and right.
Okay, wait.
City clerk warrant.
Who requested?
Yeah, we would, yes.
water.
Anyone else? Roll call on the minutes as corrected, or not? Right. All in favor, the minutes as corrected, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to mayor's reports. First item is a proclamation for Playful City, USA. And there's a nice long proclamation in your packet. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Suffice it to say that the United City of Yorkville is making a Playful City proclamation proclaiming the month of September 2012 as a month of play in the United City of Yorkville. Everyone's welcome to look at the packet and read the rest of it. Next is River Road Bridge. I'll entertain a motion to approve the second intergovernmental agreement for the replacement of the River Road Bridge over Blackberry Creek, Yorkville, Illinois, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute. Second. Comments, questions on this? Well, first, the Bartos. There are some changes we need to make you all aware of.
Sure. The county engineer had sent me an email yesterday asking for a couple of quantum changes. He was out of the office last week. Just wanted to get a chance to review it before it our packet. They are in order. There's three of them. One is that any reference to the amount of $600,000 would be changed to $500,000. And that is because if you read the Administrator's Weekly on Friday, bids came in, were open, 20% less for construction than they originally budgeted, which is great news. And so because of that, the revised estimate for the entire project is probably going to be between $430,000 and $450,000. So an upper end of $500,000 still gives us $50,000 or $70,000 of contingency room. So staff is okay with that. The second one is that the date they requested that the references to December 31st being the payment date be changed to October 31st, and that was because that's the end of property tax season when we should be, in theory, flush with cash, and that meets some of their budgeting deadlines as well. We were okay with that, we had no objection. And then the third was that they had requested that if the city goes into default of this agreement by not making the annual payment after the fact, that the county would have the authority to basically withhold real estate tax proceeds due to the city the following year. So that's something that, I don't foresee us ever having to skip a payment. Yeah, just shaking your head, so I guess we're not even sure if it's legal, but
I am sure it's not legal.
that was something I know the highway committee did.
I am sure it's not legal, so it has to be just not. One taxing body cannot confiscate the proceeds from another taxing body because there's a contractual arrangement.
So two on the board, which is the payment date and then the total.
Comments or questions? We need an amendment to amend the agreement to...
There's been a motion to approve.
The motion to approve, yes.
So the motion to approve now should be restated to the motion to approve with the changes as stated by the city administrator.
I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
Comments or questions on the amended motion? Roll call, please.
Muns.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Closemo.
Aye.
Cott.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Teeling. Aye. Gilson.
Aye.
Oshowski.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The agenda is the fiscal year 2013 budget. Somebody didn't put it on silent. I heard your name. I heard your name. Anyway, before we jump into the budget, a few things I wanted to comment on. First off, it's unfortunate that Rob Frederickson, our finance director, isn't here tonight. And I wanted to give him and his staff a big thank you. And not only Rob and his staff, but all the department heads and their staffs. Everyone did a great job working on this budget. Mr. Olson is our budget officer. Thank you very much. I know a lot of work went into this budget. And as someone mentioned at the podium tonight, this is the first year that we've done a 5-year budget. It's something that I asked for years ago in some of our goal setting sessions, and it's nice to see it, take reality. Ben has given us multiple years to look at some of our problems and address some of our problems and head off a lot of those problems. Also, a big thanks to all of you here tonight, the City Council, big thanks. We've accomplished a lot in the last 10 months. I just wanted to point out a few of the things that we did accomplish in the last 10 months. And first on that list is property taxes. We have lowered the city's tax rate by 30% this year, giving all of our residents property tax relief. We're expected to lower property taxes every year through 2015. I mean, that's a lot of things we talked about during campaign time. It's something we delivered on, and I'm proud of all of us for that. And this year, we erased our negative fund balance. We took over our fund balance, was about a negative $300,000 or so, right in that neighborhood. We erased that fund balance in the last 10 months. We will finish 2012 with a higher surplus than we budgeted for. It's only the second time since 2007 that we will end the year with a surplus. So again, something to be very proud of. The proposed fiscal year 13 budget also anticipates a surplus. So we are working on building that fund balance. We talked about building the fund balance, and we're delivering on it. If the county helps us with the River Road Bridge funding that we just passed, we should be at a 15% fund balance by the end of fiscal year 13. That'll be the first time we've met our policy guidelines of a 15% fund balance since 2008. We were also able to hire 3 new police officers this year, so we're putting more cops on the street. In the proposed 5-year budget, we're adding a sergeant in fiscal year 13 and 1 officer per year all the way through 2017. We've quadrupled our road maintenance budget in this current fiscal year. Last year it was $50,000 towards road maintenance. This year it's $200,000. And each year after that, it's a minimum of $300,000 budgeted for road maintenance. I expect that number will go up in future budgets. Someone had mentioned the rec center budget. It is a huge improvement from last fiscal year, from fiscal year 11 to 12. And again, we are only expecting a small deficit this year for the rec center budget. So what I'm trying to point out, guys, is that this budget and the city is moving in the right direction. Our financial problems weren't created overnight, and they're not going to be fixed overnight. But we are taking steps to move the city in the right direction. As we discuss this budget, and I don't want to get into a big, heavy conversation tonight on the budget, more big picture items, and maybe we can reach out to staff for the next 2 weeks and submit questions on some of the smaller items or line-by-line items. I don't want to get into a big conversation without Director Fredericks in here tonight. But we'll schedule more time at the next council meeting to delve into it. But I just want everyone to be aware that everything after fiscal year 13, which is what we're focusing on, is highly speculative. It's based on very, very conservative assumptions and worst-case scenarios. So I want to concentrate on fiscal year 13. I can guarantee you, if I'm sitting here in fiscal years 15, 16, 17, when the budget looks horrible, which is only a planning tool, it will not look like that in those years. I don't make many guarantees, but I will guarantee you that. So again, and the reason Frederickson isn't here tonight is he had a baby girl. Did you get an email? Your mother's water broke.
Yeah, so he might still be waiting.
He might still be waiting, but he is at the hospital waiting on the arrival of his daughter. So with that, I will open it up to the council for budget discussion.
Can I just ask a few questions about what your changes? I know you don't want to get heavy into the budget, so I won't do that. But in terms of what we've got listed here under changes from previous, just ask a few questions on that. Under fiscal year 2013 would be the second page under land cash for the Osline grant for entry. Have we not received that yet?
The park's not finished yet. We can't submit the reimbursement until the park's completely done.
When do you expect that we'll get that?
We have to finish it by December this year, and then last time our reimbursement came, I think, in 8 weeks. So we expect it prior to the end of the fiscal year.
Finished by December and came by from the state by when?
Probably March of 2013.
special events. Explain to me what you mean by you're allocating out. I mean, you're subbing out people here to run programs, or what are we doing?
Okay, so there's...
Wait, time out, 1 second. Can you tell me where you're at, George?
Oh, I'm sorry, the next page here. It's
Well,
under,
page 3.
Page 3. Page 3 under Parks and Rec.
The largest block of the page for all the Parks and Rec, 79 revenues. So there's, within that larger block, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groupings. Okay. Each one of the groupings is...
Right, Mayor, it's the changes that Bart just gave us, those changes.
Yes.
That,
Yeah,
Middle-
it's changes in the graph.
Thank you. I'll give everybody a second.
No, it's in your packet, right? It's under page 3.
Big first flowers, or big first house. Okay. So number page 3 is at the bottom there, and then that last section there is 5 fiscal years of 4 line items each. Okay. So let's just take the first one, fiscal year 13. That last line item in that grouping is programs and fees. Line item number is 79, and the last 4 digits are 4440. Inclusive of that. The budgeted amount that we had for program fees in the Parks and Recreation operating budget is $190,000. This year, last year, the past couple of years, it's been relatively stable. And what we've talked about doing each year, or the Park Board's talked about doing, is that includes everything from music under the stars to athletic classes to preschool to special events. So they've always looked at that and said, well, this doesn't give us a good idea of what's doing well, what's not doing well, and it doesn't give you a good allocation of. So they took that one line item of $190,000 and just broke it out into 3 sub-line items. So really, it's just like taking one large group and splitting it into 3 subgroups. And that's what we're doing for each year going forward, so that we'll be able to track that between special events, child development, and athletic and fitness. There's no net effect on the budget there, it's just changing it to different ones.
Thank you. I think I have one, that's all under the changes. We'll do the rest of it. We'll continue to discuss it.
Anyone else right now?
I
Okay.
have a question about the rec center budget. Can you tell me, I mean, if we don't have a rec center, because there are a lot of people that are not having a rec center, what is going to be, what is the city going to have in the budget if we don't have a rec center? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, that's really to be determined. I mean, we've assumed nothing as far as the existence of that budget, the acquisition of it, or the release of it after fiscal year 13. So I think we contemplated that we'd make one real estate tax payment fiscal year 14 because the part of the contract was tax 30 years arrears.
Right.
But other than that, we just said, it's unrelated. Council votes on purchase agreement.
Right, but I'm just asking the question that if we don't have the rec center, and we don't have that revenue coming in,
How will that impact the overall financial picture?
yes.
Okay. You need to finish your sentence.
Thank you. I mean, because I'm just thinking, I mean, if we don't have it and we have nothing, does that mean we're going to have a lot more money?
No, and we've talked about this in various portions of the budget discussions over the past couple years. That center is its own fund aid, its own budget, so all the revenues and all the expenses go into the rec center or come out of the rec center. So there's no commingling of those funds with any other budget. Even the Parks and Recreation operating fund, 79 budget we talked about in the brief, there's nothing that's being spent out of that fund that should be in the rec center.
Okay. So that budget's going to stay the same?
Yeah, so the theory is that if you were to cancel the rec center, that you would just basically rip that page out of the budget and throw it away and it would be impacted.
Right.
So that's what happens.
But I mean, even that's speculative, because even if you rid yourself of the rec center and we find something else with programs that generate revenues, it still could have revenue, it still could be revenue producing. So I mean, everything right now, I think what you said originally, Mark, is speculative.
if we have another place to have programming and have another place, if we rent another place or buy another place, then we're going to be putting money into that too. So it sounds to me that the people that are here tonight talking don't want to have any recreation department because wherever we go, we're going to have to put money into it.
That's not what we said at all.
No, we're going to have to put money into a recreation, some sort of recreation, some building somewhere to pay for, to have programming. So I'm just trying to figure out, we had three of our aldermen did a study with the park board to find alternatives, and it's going to cost more money. So unless we have nothing, that's the only way that the budget is going to be neutral. But if we have to find somewhere else to do it, it's still going to cost the city money. So I guess what we're going to have to decide is if we want to have a rec budget for programming or we don't. That's how it seems to me, and I think I'm right on that.
Carol?
And I don't agree with you, Diane. I don't think it's an all or nothing proposition. There is a middle ground, and I think that's the ground that hasn't been explored. And that's the ground that the city council needs to chew on for the next couple of weeks when we talk about this budget. When we talk about the rec center, what we've done in essence is the city bit off more than they can chew. Okay? We've raised the level of recreation in this city to the level of almost a park district. However, we don't have a taxing body with a park district that has its own taxing authority and its own board and its own elected officials to deal with that. So now we have this high level of services, but we don't have the extra revenue. And we don't have the extra money to support it. So if we rip out that page of the budget, I agree. I understand that we don't all of a sudden have this free money at our disposal that we can use for roads and we can use for cops. And I understand that perfectly. But we have to be very cautious because if we can stay at this park level, recreation level without a funding source, sooner or later, mark my words, sooner or later, the other shoe will drop. And this council will be responsible for a $200,000 pool repair, or a $300,000 roof repair, or asbestos, or mold, or whatever else happens in this facility, and there is no funding source but us. And we already have a very delicate budget that we're trying to deal with. So yes, go ahead, vote for your rec center. It'll be all fun in the short term, but when the bill comes due, don't say that nobody told you so on the city council. So I want you guys to chew on that before we go on the park center.
Okay. We're kind of mixing two conversations here.
It's an open discussion.
No, it's fine. It's a good discussion.
So let's play devil's advocate and we just say, okay, we're not going to have a rec center and we are just out of the recreation business. How does that affect our budget? Because people are going to lose their jobs, we want to pay them. I mean, are we going to come out ahead then and people just don't make recreation? Let's do the worst case scenario.
If you just get rid of the rec center,
Okay, no programs because we're not going to have a place to put them. Let's take it. Let's just
so you're talking about
If we got rid of recreation altogether, what is the positive impact to our budget? Off the top of your head?
the net impact is probably $300,000 or $400,000. So, I mean,
We would be ahead 300 for them.
from where you're at now, because the recreation department itself.
No, we're not
No,
talking about park maintenance, we're talking about recreation.
Just recreation,
Yeah, we're still
no
maintaining park.
programs, no daycare. I'm taking the worst case scenario here.
Yeah.
What
Your expenses, if I remember correctly, are somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 for the actual recreation outlet. But they generate the most amount of revenues out of all the departments as they charge for their programs. So when you net that out, and all the revenues that they bring in, you're not getting those anymore. The impact that you can pay for your corporate costs.
It also wouldn't just be programs, it would also be special events. So you'd have no more events in the city.
if we take the worst case scenario,
This is going to be $300,000 to the top.
And we won't be a playful city.
We'll be a bankrupt.
here, we're talking about the worst case scenario.
Since we're talking rec center kind of go,
got in here. Basically, if we don't have a rec center, we don't have rec programs for kids to do, what are they going to do? I mean, growing up in Chicago, the only thing we really had were the parks. Every neighborhood had a park. You got a little park with your swing set, a little water thing, and a park house going to a ping pong. We don't have that here, but we have some things for kids and adults community to do. If we have no amenities in the city, who the heck's going to want to live here? It's going to keep you dry right by Yorkville. There's the unplayful city. There's nothing to do there. There's no rec for the kids. Why would you want to move your family here? It's crazy. I'm not saying go out and spend $80 million on rec. And if this rec center deal doesn't make sense financially, I'm not saying I'm going to go for it. It doesn't make financial sense. But we got to have things to attract people to Yorkville. You want to move into the city and just go dig yourself a hole and, okay, no taxes, but you live in a pile of dirt. That's what it's going to happen.
This is totally
You
different.
guys talk, so I appreciate you laughing when I comment, okay?
This is totally off the rec center. This is a completely different budget item. In the general fund, we still have that $332,000 from the library in the general fund. I understand that it is earmarked for the Game Farm Road project. However, and this is one of the questions that was on your sheet was what is that grand reserve thing? It's because the money was in the general fund that we were supposed to pay the developer back, and we never did. And then the money got spent, and we didn't have the money anymore, so we had to pay them back. So that's what that's about. And I want this money, this $332,000, out of the general fund and put into a capital fund because that's where it's supposed to be. And I understand that, it's marked, it's not going to be spent, but it already happened one time. I just think it should be put over there. And the same topic with that is in your presentation, and this is just something for you to answer the question later, you said that we have to come up with a revenue stream for the Game Farm Road project, which we don't know what it is. However, I feel like we are committed to the Game Farm Road project because we took this $332,000, from the library, their capital fund. We need to know what is the revenue stream going to be. I think that's something that we need to really work on because when do we have to use that money by?
It's currently scheduled for construction to begin fiscal year 15.
Right.
So the way I understand it, and Jeff and Eric might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got maybe a year or two after that you could potentially push it back, but it's
17.
slotted for 15.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that's hard with that either. It's just
Because it seemed like there were other things, other line items. Were there other line items in the general fund that were for different projects?
I mean, for capital projects, yeah. And I guess the point I made in the presentation about that is in order to sell a bond, you have to identify a revenue stream.
Right.
So identifying a revenue stream for bond purposes is different than finding a revenue stream for budget purposes.
Right, and I understand that, but I mean, are we probably going to have to bond for that?
Yeah, there's going to be almost certainly no other way that you're going to be able to take that.
Right,
apart.
so we need a revenue stream for that bond somewhere, somehow.
From budget standpoint, we've got it shown right now as you're just paying the proceeds out of the general fund each year.
Okay.
So that's one, it's a major component, but not a majority of your general fund deficit in 15, 16, 17. So, we're showing right now that the general fund is going to be deficit, and that's one of the reasons, because you're just paying the Game Farm Road fund, the general fund proceeds. I would suggest that's probably not the best thing to do, but, you have to find a way to do that now.
Right.
No, you've got to look for it.
Right, well, I would recommend that you move that out of the general fund, $332,000 into the capital fund, just so it's there. And we know it's there, and it's not going to get spent again. And it's not going to get spent again. Because I already feel like it's been spent once by giving it back to the library.
Now, is that a problem moving into the capital fund, or is that something you're not prepared to answer right now?
It's a policy decision for the board. Really you're just talking about whether you want to transfer it to fiscal year 15, which is what we've got right now, fiscal year 12. It's really more of a budgeting calculation decision. You know, if you move it immediately into the capital fund now, you impact the general fund balance, which will rectify itself in fiscal year 15, and it's not that big of a deal. But whenever you spend money that's earmarked, you know, Rob and I's, our budgeting principle has been identify whatever that revenue stream is going into the fund whenever you spend it. That way it's real easy and real clear for somebody to see, you know, you're spending this money in Bean Park Road in fiscal year 15, and you're transferring money in basically that's earmarked in fiscal year 15. So otherwise what you have is like, you're going to have that money basically sitting there in your fund balance in your citywide capital for 3 years until it gets used. It just doesn't present, in my opinion, a clearer picture of the citywide capital fund balance. So it's a policy.
Sure. I actually agree with Diana. Not often, but I agree. It should move to that, and it overinflates our general fund picture when those funds are going to sit, and they're going to have to go where they're supposed to go anyway. So I actually agree that's a great suggestion that we should consider. But I have one other question as well. In answer to Mark's question about the $150,000 for Lynette Ridge, that $150,000 is the recapture part. And my question is, and I've asked this, not once, I've asked it 24 times. Every time I've asked them who we owe that $150,000 to, and if we owe it at all, I was given the vague answer that we're not sure we owe it. So why is it in our budget as having to be paid out?
In case we do owe it. Budgeting for the worst case scenario. So if we don't owe it, obviously we won't pay it.
Should we make a legal determination about that and decide if we don't or do, and make sure that we're negatively or positively impacted by the dollars that we're including or excluding from the budget?
What year is the budgeted in? That's not 13, correct? No. Yeah, so again, depending on worst case scenario, when we go to approve a budget in that year, I'm sure it will not be in there. And again, that $150,000, don't we have a judgment against Lynette Ridge for more than that $150,000?
But that's separate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean,
that's a separate issue.
one will wipe out the other.
It is budgeted in fiscal year 15. So
Part is in this year?
the 1 year approved.
So I mean, if this is going to negatively or positively impact our budget, shouldn't we make a determination of whether or not we owe this money to somebody?
No, and I would really suggest that it wouldn't be a good idea to talk about your strategy and what you do other than the session. You know, it could be potential for future litigation. So, you know, you budget for the worst case scenario, and if you don't spend, you don't spend.
What exactly, I know this has been questioned several times, what exactly does professional services cover?
We can give you, well, in general, it's everything that's outsourced that's a professional management contract in every department. So it's kind of each department's catch-up. In the admin department, it might be auditing services or accounting services if needed. So I know that I've given detailed reports, general ledger reports. I can forward those over to professional services again if that reason.
My question also is that it's gone up considerably from fiscal year 2011 to the proposed 2013 in every department.
And it's been way over budget. And we can talk about that in committee as well as, you know, maybe we should separate these professional services out by line item so that there's no longer a catch-all, so we see where that money is going.
Yeah, a year ago we tried to consolidate more line items than not. That way it was a little bit smaller budget, it's a little bit easier to understand, because otherwise you have, you know, different line items basically in each budget for each department. And so you, in my opinion, you lose the general understanding of what you're spending money on. And you can always unconsolidate them, you know, you can detach them from each other in each department. In my opinion, then you've got each department and got different line items.
Because I just think the issue is, Rose, and tell me if this is where you're going with this, is if you look at our budget, I mean, you're talking 120, 130, 150, 160 plus percent over, or 60, 20, 30, 60 or so percent over budget. I mean, most of these professional services are 20+% over budget right now.
Yeah, and in different departments, there's different answers for each one. Some of them are related to liens and deeds, some of them are, because, recreation invoices for contracted services are over budget, so, there's different answers for each department, because it is a group line.
Could we possibly do footnotes for each department? I don't think that would be difficult. I think that we could understand. And then I have another question. Do we have any money, any funds allocated for future grants?
Are we planning to spend money that we haven't?
No, are we planning as a city to apply
Oh.
for various grants
Sure.
that may be coming up?
Yeah, it's going to be your land cash budget, which is 172. Which is page
58.
Thank you. Okay, so if you go to the revenue side, because in general, if you plan for a grant, you've got revenues and expenses, so it should offset in the long run. Range Tree we're currently doing, obviously. Hopkins Park is a recreational trail grant. We've got that budgeted for reimbursement fiscal year 14. We applied for that a year ago. Still haven't received notifications to whether we've got it or not. And then the only one after that is Riverfront Grant, which is projected for reimbursement fiscal year 16. And we applied for that last year as well. So we're still waiting for a word on that. So other than that, we're not projecting to apply for any more grants. If they come up, that can be a decision at the city council at the time. So in general, since they've been revenue neutral, doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, pose a hazard because we generally use it.
Okay, so all the ones that are on here right now, we already applied for and we've been accepted. I'd like to make a proposal that we do not apply for any more until we get this budget the way it should be, not in a deficit, because it seems to be a temptation. Over and over again, we hear, well, the state's going to give us the money and we only have to pay 20% or whatever it may be. And I think that the temptation is not fair. We could just eliminate applying for the grants, and I think our budget would look much better. The city has no money for any type of grant. I don't care who's guaranteeing it, who's going to promise us money. It may be something we're stuck with, and I think that as we have to be responsible.
George?
To add to that, even more importantly, the state of our state is they can't pay their bills. They're broke. So to depend on $400,000 for the outside grant from Range Tree and 270 for all these different grants that we have out here, boy, we're taking a big risk in that alone, whether or not we receive the approval or not of these grants. I think when it comes down to the brass tacks and they have to decide whether or not they can pay their debts and pay their obligations, I think these will be low in the total what we pay back. And despite their obligations, and I just don't trust the state. I really don't. And so I support Rose's proposal. I think it's a good idea to stop taking out grants where there's matches that we can't afford to put out and liquidate.
Well, I disagree because especially with the Raintree grant, the Raintree Azad grant, isn't that a park that we have to build in our development agreement?
That one, I don't recall.
I mean, I
There
don't
are
think we should.
other annexation agreements.
I don't think we should across the board say no grants because we have annexation agreements that we have to put parks in and we're obligated to do it. And if we say no grants across the board, then we're going to have to pay the entire price for those parks.
What she said was
Apparently you
more close.
misunderstood because I said any future grants.
Right. She
These we've all applied for.
No, but I mean, there might be other annexation agreements that we still have to go to Parks for.
Well, that's when we look at the annexation agreements beforehand and see what is in there.
We have several businesses right now that we do have a foundation.
I guess this is just my 2 cents on this particular discussion is whether you put that policy decision into a budget document or not. It can always be reversed at any time or another. I mean, there's really no legal basis to prevent you from applying for a grant. So, you know, you can do it. I don't know what weight it's going to hold in a budget document, which is really hard to get spending. So, you can put it in there and then vote to approve a grant next month or not. I don't.
You can't bind, legally you can't bind anybody. So if you adopt it as a policy, it's showing the preference, which is what we're saying. They have it as a preference is, but legally it's what's your position?
Changing the subject just briefly here. This proposed budget does not call for any employee raises, correct?
Correct.
Just for information purposes, how many years has it been since they've been given a raise?
2008.
For our next budget meeting, which will be in 2 weeks, is it possible, or maybe we already have it, like a survey of our surrounding communities to see how they're doing with getting raises?
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful when, I don't know if we have the money, but at least we know what we're dealing with as far as the prospect of losing employees.
Jason, let's raise my hand.
No, I haven't gotten it. I want to make sure I'm part of 99%.
Anything for tonight then, big picture budget stuff? I mean, my plan, to make the most efficient use of our time is over the next 2 weeks, if anyone has questions, submit them to the staff. They can come prepared to discuss it next week. We're going to try to keep, or in 2 weeks from now, try to keep the agenda light for our next meeting, so we have a lot of time in it, we can focus on budget questions. Again, if members of the audience or TV land have questions, email them to you all, and they forward it to Bart, we can compile them, and we'll try to address as many of the questions as we can in this next budget discussion.
And it'd be my plan to try to get the answers that were posted tonight. We could answer out in the next packet at the latest, hopefully a couple days ahead of time. We'll try to submit them to hopefully submit it to the packet.
Okay, we'll do it with that.
Can I ask one question about that? How will the general public know what changes were made when we go out the packet in 2 weeks? Is there going to be some kind of like in red or highlighted or so I can, because it's a lot. You guys did a great job, but it's a lot to go through, and I don't want to have to go through all of that again. Looking at my old paper, looking at my new.
The horizontal spreadsheet that we had that narrated the changes, it was like 4 or 5 pages long, we touched on at the beginning. Anything that's authorized by council for change, or we just know is going to be wrong and needs to be changed, we'll put on there, we'll just append it as a list. So hopefully it's relatively easy to follow because it just says line item, budget locations, dollar amount it was changed to and from. And then that'll be it until the city council says, adopt this spreadsheet, we like all these changes, that's good, and then we'll put out a completely new, clean budget document for everybody.
So nothing in the budget itself will change, just in that tracking that.
We've been told in years past, and this is always up to you, that, do not touch the actual budget document until, the end of the process and we're ready to vote on it, because otherwise everybody just gets versus lost.
Right, no, I like that policy.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone's good with what we're on for now? That brings us to no public works committee report, economic development committee report.
Yes, sir, I'd like to make a motion to approve an ordinance approving the general release and termination agreement for the development and redevelopment agreements for the Tuscan Plaza project and repealing ordinances 2006-55, 2007-40, 2007-61 that approve those agreements and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute.
Second.
Comments or questions on this? Yes, sir.
We approved this. Is there a new development agreement on the horizon here, or are we just cleaning up some old paperwork?
I don't think there's a new development agreement on the horizon. It's always possible, but one of the things that was proposed to the most recent purchaser was, if you bring us a plan, we can get it approved by city council, the purchase of the property can actually be reimbursed with TIF funds, a portion of it. So they said, no thanks, we're not looking to do that, we prefer to get it done as soon as possible. So, that leads me to believe that it's probably going to be a little while before they're ready to develop the site. So this was just a cleanup issue that their attorney actually had requested. They don't want it on title.
Well, the redevelopment agreement was recorded against title. That was done contrary to the city attorney's recommendation, so that you run into a problem. Now the property is sold, and the sale was held up because there's a lien against title. It is irrelevant because we declared that agreement in default when the developer defaulted, and it's been off of our books for 2 years. So for the future, recording redevelopment agreements is not the norm because it clouds title in order to allow transfer.
Any other comments or questions on that one?
Is this TIF still in our budget?
No. It's this redevelopment, it's under the Fox Industrial. This redevelopment agreement is downtown. I'm sorry.
Those are the big old ones right on there.
Right.
The TIF is still going to be in existence, but the expense, the obligation.
This line item expense is wiped out to you as a potential commitment. It is no longer
For the downtown.
The Tuscany development is no longer a commitment against the downtown. This is still in effect.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Spears,
Aye.
Walsall,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Funkhauser,
Aye.
Teeling. Aye. Gilson.
Aye.
Milszewski.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Motion carries.
No, there's one item moved from consent agenda. The resolution 20, County Economic Development.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the EDC 2012-18, a resolution supporting the Kendall County Community Economic Development Plan dated December 2011, authorizing the mayor and city clerk.
Second.
Comments, questions on this one?
Real quick, this came out of EDC had some discussion on a positive recommendation to bring to city council, Yorkville, and forth, but we just had a chance to read the plan. So.
I pulled it, so I'll start here.
Sure.
I read this, and overall, I think this is a great bill, but there's just a few key components of this plan that I don't support. Those components, number one, include the Prairie Parkway, which, in my opinion, right now is a colossal waste of time because the state can't pay what they have. Even if they built several miles of road, they don't have any more money to build any more. And to support anything in this document that makes reference to the Prairie Parkway or any sort of transportation plan that's related to the Prairie Parkway, I can't support that. And I didn't support that with our plan. So I just don't support that at this time. Until the state can show me that they can actually build a road and pay their bills, I can't support the Prairie Parkway. The other things in there that I question are the involvement in increased rail in Kendall County. I don't know how much of that is relative to Yorkville and to a broad stroke of saying we want to increase rail here. I have to look at that as per situation. Broadband and fiber optic expansion would have to be evaluated. large costs involved in that expansion. Ironically, it's a huge cost, and I can't broadly support that. And the other thing it talks about is involvement in expansion of higher educational facilities. Why would we want to be involved in that? I just not quite sure I support that either. And then incentives for attracting manufacturing, such as broad risky incentives may not be the best way to attract manufacturing. It talks about, on page 10, there's a statement about use the same factors that attracted such current businesses as Menards, Plano Molding, and Caterpillar. Well, times have changed, and our financial positions have changed, and I'm not so sure what incentives attracted them, and I don't know if I want to support any sort of incentives that may want to attract future businesses in the same manner. So once again, I have to look at that. I just can't broadly support a resolution like that. These are different times, and obviously risky incentives at the taxpayers' expense might be something we want to look at here. But overall, my thoughts on this resolution. Yorkville already pays a large sum to the YEDC to attract businesses in Yorkville from all over the county and the state. Why does Yorkville have to officially sign a resolution broadly supporting a large variety of things that we may not all agree on? Yorkville already does all of this through the YEDC and pays a huge sum to do this. I feel this plan is a county plan. It doesn't need a resolution by Yorkville to work with the county to attract new businesses and implement a sound economic development plan. And that's how I feel about this. I don't think that we have to resolve all of us together on this plan. We're already working with the county. We already have a YEDC that's doing that. So I'm not sure why we have to all resolve on a resolution that has components that we may not all agree on. That's just my thoughts.
Any other comments or questions?
I do think I agree with George on many of the comments he has made. And then reading what they want us to attract, I think one of the last things we need to attract would be more banks. I mean, we've got banks on every corner, and that's in here. And I don't agree that we should be a part of this.
Anyone else?
So really the only question I had, Mr. Mayor, was, what's the upside of passing this and what's the downside of not passing it? That's really when I first read it. I thought to myself, is this just another thing that really doesn't matter which way it goes, one way or the other? I mean, seriously, it doesn't bind us, it doesn't commit us to anything. It's just, I don't know, it just looked like business when I reviewed it. And I just need to know, if we approve this, does it commit us to anything? If we disapprove it, does it affect our future ability to do anything?
I would say no. I think it's just a resolution of support, just like we did with people who were up here for Kendall now, or Protect Kendall now, or any other thing that you need the whole county or community to work together towards. We're supporting economic development in the county, more or less. It's not committing us to support the Great Parkway. It's not committing us to anything. So in essence, yeah, busy boys.
Well, and I think with that said, I think I'll vote to support it. I agree. I don't agree with everything in it. I think it's going to be impossible for different governmental agencies to come up with a study that every single body agrees on every single point. But out of deference to Chairman Cuuncil, who has been very good to this board, and I think we want to improve our relationship with Mr. Cuuncil and the rest of the county board, and it does not commit us to anything. And I agree with you, George. There's things in there I don't agree with. I'm still going to vote yes to approve it to hopefully move forward.
Yeah, one of my concerns in there, it's a beautiful written plan, but it's kind of a lot of, to me, duplication services, and there are things that can cost us more money. I don't know if it'll be enough or I won't support it tonight, but we've got to be careful we don't expand this EDC county department into, there's one person doing it now, supposedly it's a county work already, but you can just see where this goes in government sometime.
Sure.
If it expanded, extra people, we're going to be paying more, like everybody's talking about taxpayer dollars, that's just going to pay for. So as long as they're just out trying to work for the whole county and they're not going to expand what it's going to cost, if they spend money on their budget, then there's less to kick in and they can't count everything else. So
pause for a minute and take only one thought of mine about this resolution, is it's a linchpin. And that linchpin is, you know what, City of Yorkville, you resolved to support this. And why now are you not helping us? Why now are you not supporting the Prairie Parkway or this fiber optic expansion or these banks? And that might come back to haunt you.
Well, my other response to that would be that we're supporting the county in a theoretical point here. It's in theory. When the rubber meets the road and they come forward with a specific proposal and a specific point that they're now asking for a specific commitment, I don't think they can expect this council or any future council to say, well, you approved a 15-page PowerPoint presentation with a couple little graphs, so now you must approve and be on the hook for this money. If they think that's where we're consensus, so I think they have an unrealistic expectation. I mean, when any of this comes to fruition and they bring over a proposal on one specific aspect of this plan, then we'll have to make that individual decision if it's something the county wants to be involved with and pay into. And I don't think that in any way we're committing this city or taxpayer dollars to a generic, broad-based idea, because 90% of the stuff in there I agree with. I don't agree with some of the same issues that you pointed out. Voting against it, then, am I saying I don't agree with the 90% that I do? So, I mean, the argument can go either way.
So, Carla, why resolve to a plan where you don't support everything?
Again, it's a plan. I mean, we have a comprehensive plan for the city that I'm sure every alderman here can find something that they disagree with. You know, it's a plan.
Right, so why not let them have their own economic development plan, and we all don't have to resolve to something we may not agree on.
Agreed. So it's probably you're welcome to vote no. If there's anything else, I'd call for a vote. Roll call, please.
Munns?
Aye.
Bilszewski? Aye. Gilson?
Nay.
Teeling? Aye. Funkhauser?
Aye.
Cott?
Aye.
Wolfsmal?
Aye.
Spears?
Nay.
Motion carries.
No public safety committee report, no admin committee report. Park board. I will entertain a motion to approve a field use agreement between the city and the Yorkville Reds, a field use agreement between the city and the Youth Baseball Softball Association, that's Yorkville Youth Baseball Softball Association, a field use agreement between the city and the Yorkville Sparks, and a field use agreement between the city and the Yorkville Travel Sports. Authorized by the mayor to execute.
So moved. Second.
Comments or questions on the baseball agreements? Yes.
This is just a general comment. I think it's pretty good that they got everybody in there because obviously like and now there's 4 different organizations that are using it, so it's pretty good of the department to have gotten that.
Yes, as long as everyone works together, there's plenty of resources for everybody, and that's what's happened in the last couple of years.
The last couple of years have been crazy.
Yeah.
This is good.
Right?
Just a point here, I noticed on the fee schedule on a couple of these, that the first payment dates already passed. We received those funds already?
So, yeah.
Well, they're working on scheduling too, so.
Yeah, because I was going to mention March 1st may be a little bit early, because not everyone has their schedules done by March 1st. I mean, Law, yes, just finished registration after March 1st. So that
We're trying to give you guys motivation, but we can change it next year.
Well, let's make it realistic. Anyone else have baseball agreements? Roll call, please.
Wolfsmal?
Aye.
Cott?
Aye.
Funkhauser?
Aye.
Teeling?
Aye.
Gilson?
Aye.
Bilszewski?
Aye.
Munns?
Aye.
Spears?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Do we have any planning commission or ZBA?
No reports.
On the planning commission, we will note that we probably have a full house tomorrow regarding Evergreen Farmers. I mean, I know a lot of aldermen, I know I've gotten a whole bunch of emails on it, so if anyone's interested, please show up at the planning commission tomorrow. I think a lot of questions will be answered at that meeting tomorrow. No city council report. City clerk?
No report.
City treasurer? Report. Community and liaison reports. Alderman Spears.
I have a couple here. I wanted to report the polar plunge, the results of the polar plunge that we had. There were 232 individuals that registered for the plunge. Of those, 298 actually jumped in the lake. As of today, $81,622 had been raised for Special Olympics. And I think that this is just an awesome amount that they did raise, considering our current economic times. And it appeared everyone had a good time. Even though they were freezing, they enjoyed it. And the other report was the Southwest Fox Valley Cable and Telecommunications Consortium. Last week I attended the FETV board meeting at Wabansie Community College in Sugar Grove. It was noted that all consortium members submitted their third quarter fees, and their quarterly refund should be distributed sometime next month. The Comcast franchise agreement will expire September 2014, and Max Herwood of North Aurora will meet with Comcast reps to begin negotiations. The 2013 budget was reviewed and approved by the board. Manager Mike Reynolds presented an update report covering the month of February. They completed video recordings of 8 scheduled city meetings for Yorkville, Plano, and Sandwich. They conducted Girl Scout and Boy Scout tours, recorded 4 Plano, Yorkville, and Sandwich boys basketball games, aired live West Aurora basketball games, and shot a Fox Valley and Focus program in 2 mental health first aid episodes. They have 12 new Access producers that completed the training class, and their classes are now full to capacity. Well, I think that's all I have. That's it. Thank you.
I have a couple questions if you don't mind.
Certainly.
That 81,000 that they raised, that's just from our polar plunge here at Silver Springs?
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yes.
And Fox Valley Television.
Yes.
And they broadcast live. Is that live to channel 17 or channel 10, or is that just live on the internet?
I believe it's live to channel 17.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're working with the high school, and then they're doing it, they are televising it live. Now, the other ones that they have are being televised Wednesdays. Whenever they tape it, it's all going to be on Wednesdays, but it's so successful.
That's huge. I on the board, I always had that as a goal, to broadcast live, so that's a huge step.
And possibly we should work on baseball.
Yeah?
I mean, there's so much interest with baseball. I think if we can get...
Baseball is very hard because the field's so big, you need at least 2 cameras so we get the shot, because the batter hits it and goes out left center, the camera's not going to catch it fast enough.
But they do have enough producers now.
Well, it
You
needs
know, they
extra
have
cameras.
that many people
What
that...
you thought?
Yeah, I'll bring it up again.
Any other community liaison reports, George?
Just to add to the Special Olympics, I was a part of one of the teams that raised roughly near $4,000, and I jumped in the lake. So it was cold. I went in and walked out and went underwater and came back up and walked back out. But I tell you what, it looked, even though it wasn't frozen, I think it was the coldest it's ever been. It was cold. So it was fun. But I want to do my YDSD report. On March 12th, 2012, I attended the YDSD meeting briefly before our public meeting. So I'll report what I was there for and kind of what they went through. They had a call to order, and obviously they had some public comments. One of the public commenters was Carol Sheely, who was asking some questions about the dam removal. Basically, the YBSD is going to schedule a special meeting on the dam removal, and will be scheduled for public awareness and questions. That will be within the next month, and they're saying tentative dates for consideration on the 29th of this month or April 3rd. So everybody who has questions about the YBSD, YDSD about the dam removal, I would encourage you to attend and ask any questions you may have about the dam removal. She had some of Carol Shealy's questions were, what will happen to the land that is created once the dam is removed? In other words, will the lines move around and will the land that's created? One of the answers was they don't think there'll be any new land created, but they said it's a good question for a public meeting. They said the banks are going to be steeper, but the property line will likely remain the same for Carol. I asked them if there was any issues to report to the city council, and the only thing that we talked about was, I asked about the grease trap situation. I brought up in the past about they wanted the city to consider putting a link on their website to a standard for grease traps, so that these contractors and developers out there that are looking at either putting a new grease trap in or developing and having to install a new grease trap can actually click on our website and look at their standards, so that there's no confusion. They're having a lot of issues with grease traps and confusion on their standard and specification of the grease traps. So they asked me once again to pose that question to work with them, so we can try to put a link on the website for grease traps. There's an amendment for approval of all overtime being approved by Kevin and a waiver, or basically just an amendment saying that Kevin is going to be approving all overtime. Motion, they approve the minutes as presented, and they approve the bill payments as presented. The health insurance, once again, your YDSD health insurance will increase 2%. So just for our reference, we're looking at health insurance increase 2%. And then I didn't get a chance to go through the rest of the meeting, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other community reports? I have one. I was approached by Community Meals for Seniors. We're going to be starting a dine-out program for seniors here in Yorkville. There's a program in Yorkville. And what it is, it's a program that's open to all Kendall County seniors 16 and over. It's a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization. And they encourage all seniors to take advantage of this. Seniors must register and purchase tickets at City Hall. So tickets will be sold here. You get a ticket just like this. The program allows seniors to purchase these tickets for $3, and it's good for a meal at participating restaurants throughout Yorkville. So they are funded by different types of grants, and very successful in Plano. They have 6 restaurants in Plano that take advantage of it. So it's a good program. We're going to get in touch with Senior Services and let them know about it. But these will be available at City Hall in the very near future. Another thing I have is next Saturday is the St. Baldrick's fundraiser. So if anybody wants to come out and see me get my cue ball, you can put it in the golf. I encourage all of you to come on out there. I've seen some pictures from last weekend's event at Ultimate Sports Bar. And there were some women out there getting their heads shaved, so I also think there are older women that take part in it. Or if you'd like to donate, stpaulbridge.org. You can find Team Mayor G and Anthony Rosati's next Saturday at 5 p.m.
Tim Barton sign up yet? Mayor.
Fundraising, yes. It's been tricky.
That's all I have. Next, we'll move to staff reports. Any staff reports?
I just wanted to let everyone know that Amy Sussich and I, as a park board member, we went up to Cuuncil this weekend, up in Madison, Wisconsin. It's at the Alliant Energy Center. It's about 25,000 paddlers that come through that. It's actually, I guess, the world's largest paddling exhibition. So it's pretty big in the paddling world, but we got to speak with a lot of people who were interested in the Yorkville shoot. I think we brought a lot of positive energy to the shoot and said, come on down, see Yorkville, see what's here. Talked about a lot of the amenities down at the park. I did want to thank Stonefire, Hampton Inn, and Geneva Kayak for those donations. We actually gave away we raffled away a kind of weekend whitewater adventure is what we called it. there is a winner. She did contact me. I have yet to actually get everything to her, but so when I have her information, I'll probably mail about that. But just want to let you know that it was really positive, and people were really excited about the shoot. And actually, when Amy was on her way home, she stopped at the shoot. There were already 2 people there from Cuuncil that stopped on their way home to Indiana. So it was interesting that it could happen that fast. So just want to let you know.
Speaking of water course, I was over the bridge this weekend. A lot of people went over the bridge. We're on the island out there. If you haven't been on the bridge yet, check it out. Nice bird's eye view of the course. So, any other staff reports? Additional business? Any additional business? We do have an executive session, correct? For litigation. So I entertain a motion to go into executive session for litigation. Pending litigation. Possible and/or
So,
roll call.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Before you do that, it's not on the agenda.
Yes, you can. You can go into executive session at any regularly scheduled meeting. Unless it's on the agenda, you may never go into special.
Gotcha.
Roll call.